Sir, excuse me, sir. One of your men, he knocked me down in the field.
No, impossible. Our men are strictly nonviolent. They're under orders to be polite and courteous at all times. In fact, half of them are vegetarians. They don't eat meat, you know. Besides, do you have any witnesses?
They couldn't come, sir. They have to work.
No witnesses. What about the...
No witnesses.
No?
It's hardly a justified conclusion, except that our worker here didn't have the vocabulary or the insurance, apparently, to challenge the officer. Obviously, a worker could come at another time, a later time.
And all of a sudden...
But that's a situation, so we let a crucial detail
That
pass.
explains it. You were running, so you must have felt and hurt yourself. Is that it?
No, sir.
Besides, why run if you're not illegal? Are you illegal?
No, sir.
Then there's no reason to run. Our men are expertly...
Now the situation has changed around. The officer has taken the offensive, the workers are on the defensive, even though he came there to complain. But we shouldn't wonder at that. The officer is doing his thing, justifying his role, making meaning out of what he's doing and the organization he belongs to. It's a perfectly common, ordinary human situation. The question is how to intervene in that process, deflect him from the necessity to justify himself, to get him to draw back and look at you, not as a member of this adversary unit, which paramilitary groups always consider their constituencies as, but as an individual. What kind of language would be necessary, and where would it have to be used in this country in order to keep the outcome from being as unwelcome as it's likely to be?
Okay?
Oh, thank you, sir.
And if you do happen to hear about any illegals anywhere, I'm sure you'll let us know, because you'll be doing yourself a favor. After all, we're taking your own jobs away. So I hope we can count on your help.
Inform on your fellow men and get them deported, or don't inform and lose jobs. Catch-22.
Senorita, excuse me, please.
I already told you twice, Mrs. Ramirez. Go back to the waiting room, please. We'll call you when it's your turn.
But it's already 4 hours, senorita, and I have 7 kids, you know. And my husband, he no home. He looked for work in Modesto.
Well, I'm sorry, but you were 50 minutes late for your appointment, you know. That's why you had to wait. We have a lot of other clients besides you, remember.
It's not my fault, senorita. My boy Juan, he in trouble in school. He threw a Coca-Cola bottle at the teacher.
Well, look, since you're here, I'll tell you what, Mrs. Ramirez. Let's just
Notice how the social worker immediately tries to deflect
now, this is a
the sad details and takes refuge in getting back to work. A common response of many crisis workers, doctors, nurses, they want to save themselves. Their feelings are be torn apart if they make themselves vulnerable all day. But you ask the patient or the petitioner, she'll tell you it's cold and callous behavior. At that moment, her case, her predicament, is naturally the only predicament in the whole world.
Benefits, of course, Mrs. Ramirez, but you'll have to sign in this other place then. See down here? It says where it says you're in the country without papers. And afterwards, we have to forward a copy to the Bureau of Immigration and Naturalization.
See, we're witnessing, of course, the workings of the well-known devil, bureaucracy, which, like the weather, we all complain about, but don't have no much to do with. We don't know how to deal with it. The nobody in charge syndrome.
Many of you floating around nowadays in the country without papers. They'll probably never bother, you see. The immigration department can't keep up. It's just a requirement we have to do. That's all.
Senorita, please don't make no sign.
Look, you already told me your family's in...
Some agency workers are less vulnerable to the record-keeping anxiety than others. And alas, the longer you work in an office, it seems, the more responsibility and money you acquire, the less risks you're liable to take, in spite of stipulations like that. So the process tends to humanize people.
The government makes the laws. And the government says everybody here without papers has to sign
I appeal to higher authority. The government makes the laws. It's not her fault. She's not absolving herself of responsibility. So now it's heads I lose, tails they win. Kind of another catch-22 choice.
Let's go, grape pickers. Up into the truck, everyone.
How much you pay, sir?
$2.15. Also, we're furnishing you free sun hats today. And there's mariachi music in the pay toilets. And all the grapes you can eat.
$2.15 is not much, I think.
If you don't want to work, buddy, step back. Let those who aren't too late...
If you don't want to work, buddy, here the recruiter immediately incriminates the worker, putting him on the defensive, and implying if he doesn't want to work, he must be lazy. Trying to reply would be a little like answering the old saw, when did you stop beating your wife?
No, sir.
You have to refuse this shift of context altogether. Also, there's two other things. A public confrontation like this leaves much less chance for negotiation. We all feel compelled to do things with the world watching that we wouldn't in private. But the traditional way opposing parties solve their conflicts is by bargaining trade-offs, not by appeals to justice or brotherhood. But how can you bargain if you don't have something to bargain with?
Seems all I'm running into are complainers and crybabies. You know, people like you, wise guys.
Excuse me, sir, but I don't know what is a wise guy. But they say it's against the law, no, to hire illegal.
Hey, you got another job somewhere? Take it. Nobody's forcing you to stay here, right?
Nobody's forcing you to stay here. This sanctimonious question is meant to paper over and deliberately confuse the truth. Because if jobs are scarce and you refuse to work for a depressed wage, you may be sentencing your family to hardship. But suppose you agree, then you may be helping undo the solidarity of the minimum wage law. How can you tell this to a man who has so many more words than you and naturally can deploy them faster?
And the price of machinery out of sight. I had to borrow from banks last season just to get my crop in the ground. And you stand there...
He had to borrow from banks. This making apples equal oranges is a familiar tactic in argument. As if having to borrow to capitalize an investment is the same thing as not knowing where your family's next meal is going to come from.
It's bad news for everybody. I mean, okay, maybe they find a few illegals, right? And maybe the grapes...
Here we have the we're in it together ploy, also the hidden explanation. You don't know what you're doing to yourself. Now, how does one cope with what I call this reverse English that is spontaneously unleashed to further self-serving interests of whoever has more control of the language? I'm afraid classroom domesticated knowledge of English may not be enough sometimes.
And get on over here and hitch up those pants and start living in the real world. I bet you can...
Real. That's another word with real reverse English on it, meaning the world from the point of view of the speaker's interests, with the choices and alternatives he defines. There's no real world, obviously, only your or my version of it, which may be entirely different from one another.
Hello, Senor Mordida.
Who is this?
Rodolfo Martinez Ruiz.
Rodolfo, how are you?
Pretty good, I guess, senor.
And your mama, any news?
Well, she don't write too much, senor. She don't see too good anymore, you know.
Oh, too bad.
Yes, but she's still waiting, senor. 11 months now.
I'm waiting too, Rodolfo. She's waiting, I'm waiting, you're waiting, everybody's waiting.
Yes, sir, but she's getting pretty old, you know. She'd like to see the kids one day.
Well, I tell you, I'm working on it, Rodolfo. I'm doing the best I can. Only the other day I was speaking to a very
Notice
fine
that the
man.
lawyer is speaking as the authority or expert right away here. He knows because he can count on a certain fearsome respect for authority, especially learned authority in the background of this client. So he immediately claims his prerogative.
Maybe you could say me when.
Well, I'm only a lawyer, remember. I'm not a member of the Immigration Department.
Yes, sir.
This is the first disclaimer or escape hatch. He's only a lawyer, but there's a higher authority, difficult, arbitrary, government, etc., which everybody knows, at least in the old country. It takes a lot of wiles and skill and plain cash to get through to. So don't complain against me. If you want to complain, complain against them.
Traveling expenses, Rodolfo. I had to make 2 more trips to the consulate, remember. Trips cost
The
money, you know
nitty-gritty,
that.
money. After all, the client's wasted all this time, spent all this money, and hasn't got anything back, so naturally he's disturbed. But the lawyer has a reasonable explanation right away, coupled with more reassurances. Always more reassurances.
Anytime you don't like the way I'm handling the case, anytime you want to make a change, it's your privilege.
After all these assurances, the client has the nerve to still complain. Personal insult. Thus, the issue is shifted. It's not how much money you're paying me, but whether you trust my good faith.
What I said was hope. And I do hope we have your number across in 6 months. But these matters can get very tricky. One can't ever be
Tricky,
sure.
deliberate mystification of the whole affair. That's an indispensable ingredient in deflecting the thrust of the client's questions. These things can get tricky. Translation, mysterious, unpredictable, out of my hands. Notice the carrot and stick rhythm here. First, a threat, you can get another lawyer, followed by the carrot of reassurance. One of these days, your mom will be cooking frijoles in
If you
your
have
old
any other
kitchen.
questions, of course, or want to know how things are going, don't hesitate. Just ring me up. That's what
No
I'm
wonder
here
the client's confused. We hear the lawyers offering to answer more questions when, in fact, he hasn't really answered up to now anything at all.